So, hey, folks, you're starting to
Perfect.
join our live with Congresswoman Robin Kelly this evening. Thank you for coming on. We're going to wait, folks, folks start coming on. And I'll introduce Congresswoman Kelly in just a minute. But tonight, we're talking about very important things. Monday, we had another mass shooting. Holy cow. It just never ends, right? And there was a headline that really piqued my interest. It said that, the police said, honestly, these are the things that we can't stop. There's really no way to stop them. And that may be true, folks, but with regard to our gun crisis, it is true we have too many guns and too many people who should not have them. So that supply and demand is a toxic relationship. So we'll talk more as more folks come on with the amazing Robin Kelly tonight. But we're so pleased to have a real gun champion here. Just as a little bit of background, the reason I wanted to have my former colleague and always friend on tonight is that she has a real history in being a gun champion for decades. I met her, probably more than a decade ago when I was part of Moms Demand Action, and she was a champion then. But even before then, I learned a lot from her. So we're going to go ahead and introduce my friend, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who is also running for the U.S. Senate to replace Dick Durbin. That seat is open, and she's running for that. And I couldn't be more excited about that. But tonight we're talking about two very critical topics. So the first that we'll get to first out of the box is the gun crisis in the U.S. And I was just, as the team and I were going through this, we realized, wow, 46,000 deaths per year due to guns every year. Now, the last time I looked at that number, folks, was about 2022, and it was in the high 30s. So it has only grown. The other thing that's very concerning is it looks like our number is balancing out a little bit. At its height, a few years ago, there was 640 mass shootings. Last year, 503. This year, with that horrible event on Monday in Manhattan, it was 252. So hopefully we're slowing down a little bit, but I would love that number to be zero, as we all would, right? So let's get to it. I'm going to introduce Congresswoman Robin Kelly. She sits on the very important Energy Committee. And she is on the health subcommittee, which has a lot to do with healthcare and Medicare and all the things we want to talk about tonight. So she'll share her wisdom there. Before I say hi to her, I want to tell you one very important thing about Robin Kelly. She's been in Congress more than a decade, 12 years or so. But she's one of these great mentions that she mentors folks coming into Congress. She has institutional knowledge on legislation, laws, how to make legislation happen, activism, all of the things we need in our government, right? But she also is a fighter. And I have to tell you, knowing lots of folks in Congress, you don't always get a fighter with the institutional wisdom that Robin Kelly has. So with that, I will say hello and introduce my friend, Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Hello.
Hello. So good to see you. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've been thinking about you. Every time there's a gun incident, I think about you. So let's get into it. The gun crisis. Robin, you have led on legislation both when you were in the state Senate and also State House, sorry, in the State House, and then also in the halls of Congress, right? In fact, during the Biden administration, you passed a decent piece of legislation that was, had some really good things in it. Here we are, this shooting on Monday. It shook everybody again, but not enough. So tell us what you think the state of play is right now, and what do you think is once we win back the House, she said, hopefully, once we win back the House, and you're in the Senate, what do you think would be the most compelling gun reform bill?
Well, we still don't have universal background checks.
Yeah.
That simple thing we still don't have. So, I think about that because that will stop some of the access. I think about closing the Charleston loophole. They only have 3 days to tell the gun shops whether they can sell a gun or not. And if they don't hear back a definitive no in 3 days, even if it's a maybe, they can still sell the gun. And that's what happened, at Mother Emanuel Church, that he was sold the gun. And then a few days later, I think, when it was too late, they said, don't sell him the gun. So, but I do think universal background checks will definitely help. It would be great to open up the Office of Gun Violence Prevention again, so you know that you have people every day focusing on that issue. And they did a lot of things, around the country, from preventative to being there for people that had a mass shooting. Like in Maine, I know they were in and work with the people to get their lives back in order. And they've done that in many, many different places. I've just served on a panel with Greg Jackson, who was a deputy director. But I think just the basic universal background checks would be, a great thing. And also, we need to look at the laws around who is a federally licensed gun dealer, because people have kind of snuck under the
Yeah.
wire, with that, and where they sell guns at and those kind of things. But there's so many pieces of legislation, reporting when your gun is missing or stolen, so that, we could be aware of it. Safe storage. 8 kids a day um, die because there's not safe storage, and I know the governor just passed a bill in Illinois around that. Uh,
Yeah.
and I still go back to my two main things: trafficking and straw purchasing. People always say Chicago has the toughest gun laws, but if no one else around you does, then that's a problem. And we did pass the trafficking and the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is a great bill. The first one we were able to pass in 30 years, but more needs to be done. More
A
needs to be
lot.
done. We need to pass the Stop the Cycle of Violence bill, where you get to the root causes and you're supporting and investing in proven gun violence prevention measures. The groups on the street. You need people on the streets, not just the ivory tower, but you need people that are on the street doing the work. And there's proven, methods and things like that. And of course, mental health, is another issue. So there's so much, but I
Right.
would say starting with universal background checks,
Yeah.
because we've been trying to push that for years.
Right.
It doesn't
Uh,
solve everything. Nothing
no,
solves everything, but
it doesn't. When you have 360 million guns available in the US right now in people's homes and wherever they keep them, sometimes safely, sometimes not. And we have 340 million people. That tells you a whole lot.
and I don't
So,
own guns, so
yeah,
that means people own multiple guns, you know.
yeah, 100, and most people do. Actually, I remember a study they put out when I was still in Congress in 22. They indicated that if you own a gun, you are more likely to buy 3 to 4 guns over your
Mhm.
lifetime. So for me, and then what was just galling, just to dip into another topic that's related. It was galling to me that inside of the budget bill, the big, I'm called the big bad bill,
Okay.
but it's the big
Yeah.
beautiful bill. Um, they snuck in getting rid of silencer restrictions. And my question is, and I put this out there whenever I get a hold of somebody. So think about it. Why does anyone need a silencer? Literally, anyone. Why do you need a silencer? Ever? Why would you ever need it?
And also, the other thing is, because I had this conversation with Steve Scalise when he came back after he was shot. And, I said, can we try to have a meeting of the minds? I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. And he said to me he didn't have a problem with silencers or a problem with bump stocks. Remember the Las Vegas where 57 people died? Yeah, he didn't have a problem with either one. Yet when he was on that baseball field and the man was shooting him, if the Capitol Police didn't hear that, maybe he wouldn't be alive today.
Right.
But it just made me feel like, wow, y'all just don't care.
Right.
That's exactly how I felt.
If he's not going to be converted in any way or transformed in any way after he could have lost his life. I don't think people quite understand how
Right.
serious that wound was. He could have died, quite literally.
Definitely.
If he had a lot of caring folks on both sides of the aisle helping him that day.
Mhm.
And cared for him after that and listened to him and kudos you, and that reaching out on tough topics is really important, right? You've done it many times over the years, and Certainly, we need more of it, but everybody has to understand about bipartisan work is that you do have to have two willing parties, and when you only have one, it's real tough. It's a little bit like dancing the tango. You can't do it, right? You
No.
don't have two willing. Yeah. So, so on with regard to gun violence, um, before we go, I do want to talk about the Medicaid cuts and a little bit about
Hmm.
healthcare shortly, but I do want to touch on one more topic. You have dealt with this topic and been a champion for gun safety for decades. Um, and I know universal. I agree with you. By the way, universal background checks should be probably the first thing out of the gate. But on the education, the recipe of poverty, despair, and violence cannot be denied. Right? We just know that.
Oh, no,
We just know that.
definitely.
So, is there a companion bill that you have worked on that's similar to that, that just never made it to the floor, or one that you would love to put on the Senate floor should you be elected to the Senate?
Well, wow, that's a good question. Because of what you just said, um, j it's proven that if people feel like they have opportunity, if they're invested in, and if they have education. Not saying everybody has to go to college, but you can
No.
go to I just did a graduation today on, people that just became dental assistants, changed their life,
Yeah.
and programs like that, or if you want to become a plumber, whatever. But if you have those opportunities, if we invest in our neighborhoods and our young people, that would
Mhm.
make a world of difference also. So I do have some bills actually in the House that I partnered with Senator Durbin with, making sure that
Yeah.
kids have jobs year round, that
Right.
companies are incentivized to have youth employment programs and things like that. So I do have that already, but yeah, I mean, that's my other passion, making sure workforce development, supporting, education. I have, uh, in my area, a school district I'm trying to help because they wanna have, almost like um a work center, but still school where there's
Yeah.
vocational, technical, something a little different than the average, a high school. They wanna have something different, and so I'm trying to help them, develop that. So,
Right.
which in Kankakee, they have a wonderful Kankakee, career center. I love that place, and the kids go to high school in the morning, and then they come there, and they could take from soup to nuts, firefighting,
Yeah.
police, cosmetology, graphic arts, you name it. They are learning it and getting the experience because I think that's the other side of it, the stopping the cycle of violence side of
Mhm.
it. And
Mhm.
Stephen Horsford, uh, is the sponsor of that bill. I'm one of
Okay.
his original sponsors. There's about 5 of us. So seeing that bill go through and it really gets to the root causes, of the problem, which
Yeah.
is education, lack of opportunity, lack of investment, um, mental health counseling, you know, things like that.
Yeah. I do want to make one more comment for everybody on live tonight. A couple of things. First of all, if you're just coming on, hello and good evening. And we have Congresswoman Robin Kelly running for U.S. Senate. So excited to have her. Gun champion has put a lot of legislation forward. She's been very successful in working with both sides of the aisle to, in fact, bring effective legislation like the gun legislation, the Safety Act we had in. Was it 22, Robin, or 23?
No, it was 20, no, it's 23, 24, I
Yeah,
believe.
I
It,
thought
it was
I
under Joe
because it was
Biden.
after I left.
Yeah.
You're right,
I'm
it
trying
is.
to
It's
remember
yeah.
myself.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
it was 23, 24 because it was after
Yeah.
I left it, but we were working on it then. So, first of all,
Right.
thank you for that. I will say one more thing about gun violence before we leave the topic. Not only is it creating opportunity and getting rid of despair, we are making a little bit of progress. I always like to end every topic with a
Mhm.
little bit of sunshine, right? So, in New York and Chicago and in LA, murders have gone down, homicides have come down,
In
and
Baltimore.
yeah, Baltimore too, and I just
Mhm.
read that San Francisco as well. So
Mhm.
we are seeing, and the number one reason is because we're starting to have mental health providers work with the police. It's one of the number
Yeah.
one reasons. And it's very effective, folks. So I have to tell you, if you hear of a city, please support them that is working on those problems in a very introspective but dimensionalized way, right? You're looking at the
Hmm.
mental health piece. You're looking at the community policing piece. You're looking at keeping kids off the streets and education. So we're inch by inch, folks. So hang in there. I'm going to make a turn to healthcare, Robin. I wanted to get your take on, obviously, we had horrifying cuts. 17 million people are going to be without Medicaid in later 2026 and early 27.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we're going to feel those cuts sooner because the 300 rural hospitals that we have in the nation are going to feel those cuts real soon within the next 6 to 8 months. And what I'm seeing, what CNN, MSNBC, even Fox is reporting that, something like 200 or 300 of them could actually shut down because they're not going to have the money that they need to move forward. What are members of Congress and senators doing right now as we see that gap and that void in healthcare? What can be done? Where can people go? What can they do?
Well, one thing, we're traveling the country, is speaking to various groups, individuals, asking them to please get involved because, as you know, we're fighting with one arm tied behind our back. I said, I'm fighting till this arm falls off, then it's time to start kicking. But we went to Louisiana, the home of Johnson and Scalia, and I was with Hakeem Jeffries and
Mhm.
a couple of other members, and we spoke to about 500 people in the audience, and we, said to them, call them, call them. You can call Democrats, but you need to hold the Republicans accountable too. They're the ones
That
voting
did
for
this.
this. And yeah, and then also because we said to people, whether you're on Medicaid or not, if the hospital shuts down, you can't get help either. That
Yeah.
affects you too. The same thing with food stamps. People won't be able to buy groceries. So the grocery store, large or small, will have less customers. They'll buy less food from the farmers. We are all in this together. We could say
Yeah.
the other people, but we're going to be the other people eventually. And
Yeah.
in Illinois, it's 9 rural hospitals and 2 in my district. In Louisiana, it's 33. And I was speaking to somebody else. I'm trying to think. It was 26, in their state. So we really need people speaking up. The reason we're traveling, because we want to hear the stories that we can bring back. But we
Right.
need, like, I need the downstate folks that have the 3 Republicans, letting them know how you feel. And
Right.
hopefully, before we even take back the House, there can be amendments that
Yeah.
are at least some that are passed. And actually, the hospital in Nebraska, as the bill was passing, said they were going to have to shut down
Yeah.
any day. And I
Yeah.
already have hospitals, hanging by a thread because
Right.
it's so expensive. But really, speaking to your rep and letting them know, what's going on, and especially if you're represented by a red person. But we
Yeah.
want to hear the stories that we can bring back and we can share, and we're speaking to all kind of groups. So I love
Right.
that people have mobilized and are speaking out. It is very, very important. Very,
Yeah.
and also the other thing is they don't even have to just speak to their congressperson. They could let their state rep know how they feel too, because it's
Right.
going to affect, every level, and it's going to affect gun violence too. If people can't eat, people can't get health care, people lose their
Right.
jobs. When
Right.
hospitals close, people will lose their jobs, and so many people that
It
work
does threat.
federally have already lost their jobs and their health care.
Right. Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands of people. So we
Yeah.
really need people speaking up, calling in. They can call the White House,
Yeah.
also. I know he's a whatever, but
Yeah.
still call, still keep the pressure on.
Yeah.
As John Lewis said, we have to keep pressing on. We have to keep pressing on.
Yeah. I've gotten this question a lot, Robin, and then I want to ask you a question about data. But this question is, frequently I get questions when I do speaking engagements. Hey, can I call someone that I'm not in their district? So let's say, can I call my downstate 3 red Republicans? And I always say, absolutely, you can. Some of them have policies where they won't talk to you,
Right.
but you made the call, and they have to document the number of calls. So it doesn't hurt at all, folks.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that please do. I call everywhere.
Oh, no, it
And
doesn't hurt.
yeah. And remember, there are in the U.S. House of Representatives, there are 5 Republicans that are in leadership and 5 that are in Democratic leadership. When they're in the majority, they work for everybody, folks. So they do need to take your call, and they will take your
That's
call,
right.
and they won't enjoy your call, but you should tell them. So the answer here is tell your story. I'm just answering some questions here as we get pop them up.
Right.
Tell
Tell
your
your
story.
story, share your
Yeah.
story, because then we take those stories. And
Yeah.
also, we learn from people. Like when I got involved in maternal mortality and morbidity 10 years ago, I didn't even realize it was a problem. A constituent called me up and said, I want to tell you a
Yeah.
story. And when I heard the story, I hit the ground running. And then
Yeah.
also tell your story because maybe we could help you in some way, if you're facing something. So we're telling people, like my constituents, to let us know.
Robin, can you share a little bit about that topic? Because I only know a little bit, and I'm assuming some of the folks on the live tonight don't know a lot about it too. So, maternal health, particularly Black maternal health, is in a
Right.
precarious situation. Can you share a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Too many women die, period, of maternal mortality. The United States ranks very low in maternal health, in the richest country in the history of the world. And Black women die 3 to 1 times the rate of white women, but that depends on where you live. It's higher in Illinois. And then Indigenous women, their rate is very high
Yeah.
also. So um, I got legislation passed through President Biden where the postpartum Medicaid coverage period went from 60 days to a year. That's what the OBGYNs and,
Good.
doulas and midwives and nurses
Everybody.
recommended. But now that
Yeah.
they're changing Medicaid, who knows what's going to happen. But there have been a lot of different things. I've worked with ACOG, the Academy of obstetricians and gynecologists. And so
Yeah.
there have been processes put in place. And I mean, some hospitals, I'm not saying every hospital follows, but I know people that have problems with their pregnancy, and they said the process was followed. But some of it is women aren't listened to,
Yeah.
Black women are listened to even less. Uh, um, the thing that Black women can, deal with more pain, or when they share their pain, like, oh, just do this. It's kind of, you're patted on the head and sent home kind of thing. And so we have really brought it to the forefront. And even Black female doctors have come to me about their pregnancy and things that they experience. And we're trying to lift up doulas because
Good.
they're very professionally comforting, your advocate, someone by your side. My chief of staff, when she had a baby, a Black woman, and she was helped me with all of this. She had a doula, and
Nice.
before, during, and then the doula stayed, maybe a month,
Yeah.
after. So, we're trying to lift up that career because it's so very
Yeah.
important, but also really put the spotlight. I personally feel, and I've said this to docs, that something has to be different in the training
Yeah.
and the system, because it just makes no sense, why this happens. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. It in this day and age, it is horrifying to me that the state of maternal health in this country is so poor, and that we rank so poorly against countries that are not nearly as developed as we are. So that's horrifying. But more horrifying is the moral travesty of this. The fact that this
Mhm.
country so deprioritizes maternal health and deprioritizes women of color in every way, and it's gotten much worse in the last several years. Um, I, I can't help but say sometimes I'm embarrassed for our country. I'm embarrassed. I love our country, and I'm very patriotic, but I'm wholly embarrassed. So, thank you
I
for your
had to
work on
fight
maternal
and
health.
fight and fight in energy and
Yeah,
commerce because some of my colleagues on the other side, oh no, blah, 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 blah. But then one of my colleagues from Georgia had to say, oh my God, I can't believe it's so bad in Georgia because they're one of the worst. And they had a champion in the state Senate that fought for the bill that we finally got done.
Mhm.
She got it done in Georgia, at least extending from 60 days to 6 months, I believe, so women would have more coverage if they, are having health issues physically or mentally.
Right.
Everything doesn't happen when you have the baby, as you know, as a mom. It can happen, you know, some months later.
Yeah. Oh, there is no there's no linear path to those challenges. There isn't.
That's right.
If anybody tells you there is, then they're crazy. Um, One thing that I got a lot, knowing you would be coming on and you are
Mhm.
a leader in Congress, people are asking, okay, let's take our crystal ball out. Let's say we're lucky enough to get many seats. When Ro Khanna was on
Mhm.
last week, I said we're going to get 30 or 40, right? So
From
I'm
your
just praying.
lips.
I've got my whole family doing rosaries, so I'm just praying we get a lot, right? But reality, let's say we get the majority back. I think we have a very good shot at that. What do you think are the things? What is the list of items we should restore? Because we're going to have to be in the business of restoring rights, and then we're going to have to be in the business of reversing things. What do you think those top things are that we need to do?
Well, the problem is even though we take over, if the Senate doesn't take over,
Right,
we still, even though the one thing, we go back and forth about the 60 votes, but them having to get to 60 kind of helps us
right,
now because they don't get to 60, on a lot of
right,
things. And
right,
then Knucklehead will still be the president, for
right,
2 more years.
right.
So it'll be hard to,
But
um,
let's say I have
change
I
some
have a
things. But no, we have to roll back what
yeah,
this bill
yeah,
did with Medicaid and SNAP and all the environmental, we haven't talked about that a lot, that union jobs are lost because he rolled back the energy and environmental things. Like I spoke to a man that does solar and they trained all of these people, people that um that helped in the community, they weren't, 4-year degree people and that kind of thing. They
right.
helped people get good jobs and they had to pause everything because the projects are being paused or stopped. So it's childcare, you know, um, we need to definitely work on that. And the other thing, I mean, there's a lot of things, but the other thing is we have got to work on our immigration system.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
this is
works.
totally
Yeah, yeah.
terrible, embarrassing, disgusting,
Immoral,
and
immoral.
oh, all that evil, all
Yeah,
those words.
right. Immoral.
We have
I
got to work on them.
about a month ago, I got in between ICE and a young man. I was going down Archer Avenue in Chicago, and I saw some folks with masks on, and they looked and camo, and I mean, it was like beyond. I mean, it was very obvious what was going on. They were at a business actually that I know because it was in my old district, and they're standing out there, and three white women went in, and they didn't even react. Then there was a Latino man that was walking toward them with a backpack, and I jumped out of my car and I got in between 'cause I'm like, "You know what? Now's the time." So I did. Then others came over. It wasn't just me. Other people came over
Mhm,
and they did I asked for a warrant and their IDs and all of that, and,
mhm,
they didn't enjoy me that day, but but they did walk away, so that was good. But so we all have to do that, right? We all, own a part of this country, and we all have to
mhm.
protect our neighbors and our loved ones and everybody. So, um, I tell me a little bit about, one thing I get all the time, and I think this is a great opportunity for you to explain it, how sequestration works with Medicare. Because what people don't understand, while Medicare wasn't precisely itemized in the bill for being cut, if in fact the Republicans put us so far into debt, it automatically triggers sequestration. So, can you give everybody just a minute on that, how that works, Robin?
Right, it goes back to, well, I'm trying to make it as simple
I know it's a
as
very
possible.
complex topic. So, yeah, well, we'll do it together.
Be No, but I mean, I'm trying to think, I'm losing my word, but it goes
Yeah,
back to where, a certain amount you can't go over a
right.
certain amount, and then even if it goes over the certain amount, you only can deal with that amount or pay that amount, that
Right,
it kind of goes retroactive, I guess I'm trying to
right.
say.
So right,
Yeah.
so it automatically forces effectively that we have to make a Medicare cut if in fact they don't get the cuts that they feel good about and can pay.
Mhm.
So it triggers a thing called sequestration that would require taking money out of Medicare. So while everybody understands that Medicaid cuts are awful, it affects other things too.
Oh,
And then obviously the cuts to Social Security that have already happened
uh,
through Doge, people aren't answering the phone. And I just had a neighbor call me and say, hey, can you help me with Social Security? So it's happening.
I
Robin,
mean,
I know.
along the lines with
Yep.
IRS, the Social Security. One of the members was calling because she was calling about her mom. I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't say she was a member or anything, but
Right.
how long she had to. I think she was on hold 2 hours or something like that, on the phone because I think her mom has Alzheimer's, and she was waiting on the phone that long and actually I don't even know if she wound up talking to somebody because I think she had to hang up.
Well,
So yeah,
uh,
it's people.
it's so senseless and so unnecessary, all of it. I do have one final question, and then I'm going to let you
Okay.
go. What I ask all my guests this is, what are we ignoring at our own peril? Like, what topic do you think is really being ignored that puts us at great risk?
Hmm. Well, I think that I don't know where it's happening. That we are losing our status in this world,
Yeah,
and for the first time, a poll came out that people had higher regard for China than us. And I'm not saying they should have lower regard, but,
yeah, yeah,
that we're all that. But we are not respected as much. People are looking at us like, what is wrong with us? We're not looked at as leaders as much, so I just think because we have been the leaders of the free world and been there for other countries and things like that.
yeah,
And it's scary that we're losing, our status because, when we need help, is there going to be somebody there for us? We're stepping on Canada, stepping on Mexico, playing games, with Ukraine, the Middle East, I mean, and how we're treating uh, the whole immigration and, undocumented and all of that. I just feel like that puts us not as safe because other countries, with, the tariffs and on and on and on, that I just feel like other countries are not going to be there for us. And it's not going to be that camaraderie because they don't trust us,
right.
anymore.
Robin, thank you so much for tonight. People are
You.
asking, they want to learn more about you. Is there a website I can send them to? Can you share a website?
Yeah, robinforsenate.com.
The perfect. RobinforSenate.com, folks. Go and learn about her platform, all the amazing work she's done in both healthcare, gun reform, and other economic matters on the committee. So thank you all for
And then, of
coming
course, they can
tonight.
always go to Congresswoman Robin Kelly, too.
Congresswoman, yes, always.
Thank you.
But
Thank you,
thank you so
Marie.
much
Good
for
to
all your
see
good
you.
work.
We got to get together for lunch.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, you are in every part of the state every minute of the day. So I'm not going to see you for a while. I know that.
We'll
So,
find each other.
all right.
All
All right, my
righty.
dear.
Take care.
Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye bye.